Be Liao in the bio. Stage is yours.
그렇지요. Data doesn't lie, big or little. Everyone with me there? No? Yeah? Good, good. Okay. Well, of course it doesn't lie, because data, big or little, in the quantities that we generated, is indistinguishable from noise. It takes people to give meaning to data. And one of the things that I notice about big data is very similar to the sort of things that I see about big anything in the world. There's a lot of, instead of looking for new meaning, creating new meaning, there's a lot of optimization. There's a lot of what I would term incremental mediocrity. And, you know, big data has the possibility to become, you know, big wisdom, big knowledge, big information, or big bullcrap. Human beings are exceptionally good at selection bias. So even if you add human beings to big data to give it meaning, there'll often be selection bias, which then creates big lies. How many people here were familiar with the epidemiological studies that were done on heart disease some decades back? And what did those studies produce? Right? Like, most people here would say, a low-fat diet is kind of good, right? That's sort of like perceived wisdom from those studies. But one of the things that came out of those epidemiological studies was that certain saturated fats, or a lot of saturated fats, are dangerous for you. So what did they do? They said, well, there are these things that we can make called trans fats. They're not saturated fats. Let's use them instead. And the big data is there to support it. But there is now a proven link between trans fats and cardiovascular inflammation and heart disease. So those people who were forced to stop eating delicious butter and start eating horrible margarine, which tasted really bad and artificial, they die in droves. But it gets better. Another big lie from that epidemiological work. When you take the fat out of something, you put sugar in to make it taste better, don't you? We love sweet stuff. But just recently, we discovered that fructose, fructose sounds so good, doesn't it? It's sort of like fruity and good for you. High fructose corn syrup, cheap way of getting more fructose into your diet. Fructose must be good. Well, it turns out that the digestion pathway for fructose directly creates triglycerides. So if you eat lots of more fructose and sucrose, you actually also go on to develop more heart disease. Now, if you eat more glucose, no problem at all. Like, glucose is the natural sugar we directly metabolize. But fructose has to be broken down in the liver, same pathway as alcohol. So I am a little bit pessimistic in some ways about big data. And by the way, I am an optimist, by the way. However, there is room in the world for pessimists. Anyone who is maintaining the brakes on your car, you want them to be a pessimist. Anyone who's maintaining the engines on the plane you're flying, you really don't want them to be an optimist. Oh yeah, that'll work. So there is a place for pessimism, as opposed to some of the previous speakers' thoughts. But how does this apply to the funding and all these sorts of things? Well, I'm getting there. Now, when you look at how we looked at data, how we actually gathered data, how we looked at it previously, it was a very slow process. It took decades to gather some data. And now the optimists, and I to some degree, are saying, look, we can collect all this more data now and we can analyze it faster. But we need systems to give that data meaning. See, you need ways of filtering out your selection bias while maintaining your awareness. You need a way to, instead of have incremental mediocrity, you need to have massive creativity, massive new ways of actually giving meaning to data, giving meaning to systems, and then testing that meaning. Because if there's one thing I've learned is causality and testing are really much more important than a vague idea of evolution. Now, I'm a tech investor. That's what I do, right? That's my day job. I invest in high-tech startup companies. And in fact, our firm, we incubate high-tech startup companies. So what am I doing talking about big data and biotech? Well, I'll tell you, unfortunately, my daughter developed type 1 diabetes 3 years ago. And so while I had an interest in medicine and biotech, I suddenly had a deep commitment to medicine and biotech. And amongst the things that I was looking at was, what does the supply chain for insulin look like? Because my daughter is now 100% insulin dependent. Right? No insulin, no life. And I was interested to discover that the majority of the supply chain for the human analog insulin on which my daughter depends on a couple of very large pharma companies doing synthetic biology. That is, genetically engineered cells making natural insulin. Right? And I use that word natural insulin because if you take the best of the engineered human insulins, they are very, very hard to tell apart from the natural insulin that all of your pancreases, hopefully all of your pancreases are producing right now. So that was interesting to me. I started to look at synthetic biology, but then I had this little worry, right? Because I'm a little bit pessimistic, not all. I said, well, what's the supply chain really look like? If things go bad, if a few pharma companies go out of business, how's my daughter's insulin supply looking? And I discovered that there was actually only about 3 months of insulin available in the supply chain because it goes off. So that disturbed me. So I thought, well, what if I could make insulin in my basement? Because I'd heard about these DIY labs and etc. And I discovered that actually, with a relatively small investment, something between 50 and 100K, I could actually build my own insulin manufacturing system in my house. And I thought, well, if I could do that, and at the end of it be fairly confident to be able to actually give it to my daughter and say, inject yourself, honey, there must be a lot more stuff we can do now. And that's why I'm here, because if that is the case, if a citizen science can go and make something as complex as human analog insulin, boy, there is a lot of stuff that we need to be creating meaning for, and there is a lot of stuff we got to do right now. When you look at what's happened in big data, it's actually a couple of startup companies that I think have done amazing things with it. I'm going to talk to you about a few companies, but the first one I'm going to talk about is a company that I invested in called Storyful. Nothing to do with medicine. Storyful basically was a machine analysis tool to look for breaking news stories. Storyful did something different, though. They combined a very nice user interface with human journalists all around the world. And within months of starting the system, they were finding breaking news stories ahead of every major news organization on the planet. Like they were regularly beating, and still do, beat ABC and News Corp and all the others to the story. But not just to the story, to the truth. You know, there was that US senator, she got shot, and all the big networks said, she's dead. Storyful, through social media, found out that she wasn't. Found out that she was alive. Managed to contact somebody who was tweeting from the hospital and actually get the truth out there while all the world's media told a lie. Storyful was recently sold to News Corp for about $20 million. But what it did, and what I think is really interesting, is it gave meaning to a whole lot of noise. And it did it through a process which I would like to call cyberizing. You see, I think that if you really want to make progress, you need to be a bit of a cyborg. You need to be person, human, and machine. Now, I don't actually think you need the machine implanted, but I'm okay with that. I mean, my daughter's a cyborg. She has an insulin pump on her all the time, and that's actually a good thing. But generally, the technology around you needs to be supportive of you being able to generate more meaning and test it. There's a company founded by a guy called Peter Thiel, who I sit on a board with. He was one of the founders of PayPal. It's called Palantir. And again, it's a big data play. But one of the things that they did was they combined data sets from the NSA with human intelligence analysts at the CIA. Because, you know, the CIA is all about human intelligence, assets. The NSA is all about signals intelligence. And up until fairly recently, they didn't have an effective way to talk. And Palantir actually is this wonderful piece of software that sits between the two. And I'm pretty reliably informed that that's how they caught Osama bin Laden, was the combination of taking all that data and then using human analysis, cyborgs, to create meaning and actually discover the truth of where the guy was hanging out. I see that the cyberization of us as people, as scary as it may sound, is actually about to produce the largest explosion of innovation the planet and our species has ever seen. Because when you cyberize people who have skills in biotech, you are able to do things at previously heretofore unimagined scales. But right now, all you have to think about is the little stuff. And by the way, do not look to the big corporates, to the big universities, to the big institutions for the start of this wave. You know, when I was getting my start in the computer industry, there was this wonderful company called Digital Equipment Corporation, and they made tons of the world's servers, and they had a very, very strong company with a very, very, very linear optimizer growth graph. And then, you know, at the same time that they were doing this incremental mediocrity, you know, Gordon Moore at Intel was saying Moore's law. We're going to double the power of the system, of the processors, every 18 months. Now, Moore's law, by the way, is not a law. It's a business model. He said that so they could budget for new fabs. It's a law only in as much as he was the boss, so it was his law. But Digital Equipment Corporation didn't see the implications of that. And this little upstart company called Compaq started selling servers into the same market, started coming up head-to-head with Digital with their long, steady optimization of mediocrity. And what did Compaq do? They ate Digital alive, figuratively and then literally. They bought the company. So this little tiny startup bought one of the cornerstones of the computer industry, and it happened not in decades, but years. My day job is I'm a unicorn hunter, right? I am there to grow and collect unicorns. That's what a venture capitalist is supposed to do. And I have competitors, other venture capitalists who look to find the same super tech startup and pour money into them in the hope that they're going to get huge. But as a smart venture capitalist, I want to look for the newest, greenest field in which to grow my unicorns, far away from the others. And I believe the intersection of cyberization and biotech is the best place to look. A couple of really interesting things are going on in biotech. You heard before about Jack Andraka, right? Amazing kid, amazing. And his innovation of using carbon nanotubes to detect cancer, it's 40,000 times more sensitive than any other test. And you can read the test using an ohm meter, which is about the simplest measurement device money could buy. But it's not just him. There are lots and lots of other citizen scientists and young scientists who are accessing data in ways that we couldn't imagine and giving it meaning. There are 3 girls in Ireland, 17, 17 and 16 years old. They found an obscure paper online somewhere about a bacteria that helps a particular seed germinate. And they gave that piece of data new meaning. They just won Google's International Science Prize because they applied that bacteria to the most common crops we grow and discovered a completely natural way to halve germination times. And by the way, they took this idea around to mainstream people who all laughed at them. Jack also went to 10 other institutions before Johns Hopkins said, "Oh, all right, we'll give you some lab space, see what you do." The mainstream laughed at these people. Laughed. That's a big mistake, guys. That's a really big mistake. I can imagine the guys at Digital laughing at the guys at Compaq, but not for long. It wasn't Monsanto that made this new breakthrough, and these girls open sourced it. When you look at open source and what it does, when you look at the sharing of information, but more importantly, the sharing of meaning that's created by people with enthusiasm, that is a new platform on which more discoveries can be founded and grown. Companies like Synbiota, for instance, who are creating the GitHub of biocode. Yes, DNA is digital. Yes, you can code in it. And soon a lot more people are going to. Well, you want to share that code. You use Synbiota. GitHub is how programmers share their code in the open source world and the closed source world. Synbiota is for biologists. Companies like Synthase, who are creating lab standards, hacking lab equipment so that you can actually talk to it from a normal computer without the proprietary software that the manufacturer sold you for $100,000. Companies like Opentrons, who are making automated lab robots. I mean, let's face it, the entire of biology is right now being held back by how good your thumb dexterity is with a damn pipette. Right? Because if you want to repeat the experiment, you've got to read somebody's damn paper and then get your pipette out and start making thousands of little pipette movements. And yes, the big innovation, multi-gang pipettes. Opentrons is a tiny little startup that is manufacturing robots to automate that for under $3,000. And their code, once you create the experiment with the robot, you want repeatability, you upload it to Synbiota and somebody else downloads it to their Opentrons and presses print. Hello! You've repeated the experiment. You can validate. So much more powerful than a citation, really. What we have done as an investor is taken the technology that we know how to do, which is how to get startups to start. We call them accelerator programs. And this year, we started the world's first synthetic biology accelerator program based on undergraduates, interested citizen scientists, postdocs, non-postdocs, engineers, all of it in biotech, but any walk of life you like. Any idea that you could come to us, we helped accelerate. We had 6 teams start in Cork in Ireland in the summer. And by the end of the summer program, we had 6 startup companies. We're now going to be doing 20 companies a year. We are spending millions of dollars to do 20. We will do more as they become more successful. This is a wave of startups starting right now, drawing on things like Laplace, drawing on the open biotech movement that's out there as well. We have our own open biotech lab in Cork called Forma. Means bench in Irish, just like la passe means bench in French. But we are taking those startup teams and we're treating them just like software startups. Same sort of cash, same sort of return horizon, same sort of speed of delivery. We had one team, for instance, do an analysis of hagfish slime. This is a disgusting fish that's defense mechanism is to slime you. But they found that in hagfish slime there is a thread that is actually a superkeratin. It is a double helix self-assembling keratin. That is like spider's silk. Other people have discovered this sort of stuff and spent millions of dollars trying to synthesize this. This team, in 3 months, end to end, synthesized this protein in E. coli. They've actually made threads in 3 months, end to end. And none of them had a degree yet. Think about that. And they spent $30,000 to do it. Think about that. Big companies spent millions and didn't make it. A group of enthusiasts in an accelerator program did. This is a perfect replacement for Kevlar. This is what we're investing in now. And my invitation to you is, if any of you know an enthusiast who wants to do biotech for real and start their company, get them to apply. Applications are open right now for our San Francisco program and for our Cork program. We will give them funding, we will give them training, we will turn them into entrepreneurs for you, and we'll see them through to success. Because my concluding thought for you is, the world just got a whole lot more amazing. And in the words of William Gibson, the science fiction author, the future has already happened. It's just not evenly distributed. Thank you very much.